Monday Night Raw 5/13/24, the amplified review, where the King and Queen of the Ring tournament once again took precedent last night. But it was the main event that would have everybody talking. And I can't say it was for the right reasons. As Jey Uso pins Gunther middle of the ring to advance to the semifinals. Now, if you didn't catch Raw, you're going BC. That's funny. BC's got jokes today. What really happened in that main event, BC? That's literally what happened. Jey Uso hit a spear to pretty much knock out Dragunov. Little average-sized Jey Uso is still knocking people out with spears as if he's Goldberg, Roman Reigns, or Braun Strowman with his size, taking somebody through the outside barricade with that spear. Jey Uso is taking people out with a spear, people like Dragunov. And then he just hit his simplistic splash. 1, 2, 3, match was over. Jey Uso moves on. So the same way that Jey Uso would beat a Giovanni Vinci or beat somebody from Pretty Deadly or Tozawa is the same way he defeated Dragunov. That in which lies the issue, right? Nobody is arguing the fact that Gunther versus Dragunov should be at a separate PLE as a standalone attraction match. That's obvious. If any one of us had the postie pad with a Sharpie and we're booking this, we book it for a big pay-per-view, a big stage with the proper story behind it for those that don't know the history of Dragunov and Walter and didn't see NXT's TakeOver 36 and the absolute war they had, or don't know a lot about Dragunov and the absolute wars he's had with Dijak. Right? You can properly do that, of course, but that's not what Paul Levesque McMahon did. He put them into a tournament. He brought them to the quarterfinals, where it was clear Gunther has to beat Kofi Kingston, a tag team guy, and it's clear that Dragunov has to beat Jey Uso, a tag team guy. It's clear that that match now just has to happen. They backed themselves into a corner, right? Where they have to now give Gunther and Dragunov within the tournament structure. Okay, you can always get out of that corner. That's the beauty of it. What you don't want to do is panic and go off course. Two wrongs don't make a right. Right? So you can rectify this. Now you just put all of those chips onto the table for next week. Dragunov versus Gunther is going to be the focal point of next week's Raw. They did a beautiful job last night of planting the seeds. They even had Walter Gunther walk into Dragunov's interview, interrupt it, and they had a stare down. They made mention several times of some of their history. This was perfect. It was a great setup to get you to next week. And if you do it correctly, you let those boys go out there and do what they do, everybody will be wanting more. We'll be wanting to see more from Gunther and Dragunov. So this was not the worst thing in the world. It was wild that they were in this tournament because we knew they have to now meet up. Nobody should be beating Gunther or Dragunov before they see each other in that tournament. So they had a way out. What you cannot do, the one thing you cannot do, is have Jey Uso beat Dragunov, especially if you're not going to put any creative into it. It's not the worst thing in the world if Jey Uso beats Dragunov, but at least put care into it. Get creative. Make it realistic for those that know Dragunov and what he does. Because a spear splash combo from Jey Uso ain't gonna do it for Dragunov. Unless you're telling me he hit it 20 times in a row. There's no way. It's not possible. And for those newer to the channel, my veteran subscribers, especially my channel members, will tell you my favorite tag team on the planet is the Usos, Jimmy and Jay. So that shows you how much respect I have for Jey Uso and how much respect I have for Dragunov, because that dude makes you believe even if you don't want to believe. That's how badass Dragunov is. So I know when that main event went off the air, a lot of you guys were waiting, looking forward to this upload, because you knew you were going to get the blunt, amplified, honest truth to a whole nother level, because I hold both dudes in high regards. So you're only going to get the truth when talking about Jey Uso and Dragunov. And that decision last night is dumbfoundingly bad. It's the one thing you cannot do. Not the worst thing in the world, but you better get creative if you're going to have Dragunov be defeated by Jey Uso. And sorry, not sorry, just throwing some funky glasses on and doing some weird dance while shouting yeet does not make or should not make Jey Uso Superman. There is a lot that I want to get to with this main event. I'm going to save most of it. I'm going to expand on it for the actual review when we get to that part in this upload. But for the sake of this cold open, my amplified thoughts are just that. There's going to be a lot of individuals that are willing to look past that matchup or that finish and say no harm, no foul because they're saving it. Triple H is brilliant. He's going to save it for a bigger event and bigger stage, BC. It needs to be its own match with the proper story. Of course, we've all said that. BC has been, the entire upload yesterday was about giving away massive matches that don't have proper build or should be on a bigger stage. But that doesn't mean you absolutely audible to the opposite side of the track. You can't do that because now Dragunov, when he does take on Gunther, all of us have that visual of Jey Uso simplistically beating him. That's the problem. If you're willing to forget that and just block that out, that's cool. That you can do that. But now you're asking all of us that know Dragunov's performances, know what he's capable of, know how this dude should be losing, if he's going to lose. Now you're asking us just to block that out? No. Dragunov just lost simplistically to Jey Uso, who, by the way, you want full honesty, as much as I respect Jey Uso, my favorite tag team on the planet, him and Jimmy, I'll tell you this, man, and this might seem like a hot take, this may seem like a wild statement, but this is coming from a dude that absolutely respects him. Tag team Jey Uso trumps singles Jey Uso. Singles Jey Uso doesn't really do it for BC. Doesn't. He's much better as a tag team performer, a tag team wrestler. Something about him in singles competition, it's like he's a beat or two or even three behind. Almost like he questions himself, like the confidence isn't right there. Something is definitely off with singles Jey Uso. We may come to the conclusion that he's just a tag team wrestler. Some people are built to be in a tag team. They click better, they vibe better, they just do better. And when they're on their own, just off. Some people were destined to be tag team wrestlers. It may pan out that that's the case, which makes this run really cool, that he's connecting like this. It's really badass. Because I do respect the dude so much. It's so cool to see him get over like that. It just sucks that it doesn't captivate me at all, right? There's no connection to singles Jey Uso for BC. That may be a really hot take for a lot of you guys. Maybe you love Jey Uso singly. That's cool. It just doesn't do anything for me. He threw on some glasses. He does a funky dance to match the funky glasses, and he just yeets everywhere. I don't even know what that means. I'd rather, if I'm going to do one of the two words, I'd rather, yeah, right? I don't see myself yeeting in Starbucks or yeeting around Fifth Avenue or yeeting my way through the Bronx. There's no connection to anything with this Jey Uso. Not the presentation, none of it. None of it. It looks like they're setting up a feud with him in the new Wyatt Six with Uncle Howdy, as he is now claiming that he has the Fireflies, right? And then they're doing it in his entrance, and he recently said, "There's no choice. I now have the Fireflies." So something like that could be seeds planted to Uncle Howdy and his clique, but that's looking way forward. For this, I know this cold open is very long. I understand that, but it's going to be a 10-minute cold open up front. But it's just a wrong call, guys. It's not even the fact that Jey beat Dragunov, right? And we're saving Dragunov and Gunther for a standalone PPV, PLE, and a standalone attraction match. I get it, right? Bigger venue, bigger fight feel, outside the tournament. Of course, we understand. It's bigger than that. It's how you did it, bro. How you did it. that's going to linger, right? When you try to build Dragunov to be a badass to take on somebody like Gunther, we're going to remember that loss. A lot of us are. That's the problem. You cannot, this could have been and should have been rectified from the jump. Just like Braun Breaker, you keep Dragunov out of the tournament. It's that simple, right? It's believable. A lot of people have earned that spot before you. They've been on the roster longer. If the ladies want to put people like Valkyria in theirs, that's fine. That's their prerogative. For the dudes, you got to wait in line. You just got here. Keep him out of the tournament. But they realized last second they made a mistake. They don't want them facing each other. So Jey Uso beating Dragunov is better than Gunther beating Dragunov? Stop! And if you did it correctly, which I know these boys would have, we would have wanted to see the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, the 10th match between the two. You just dedicate Raw next week to that as the focal point. You planted the seeds last night. I don't know why why Paul Levesque McMahon needs to bring people up and humble them immediately. He has to hand them losses. It's not just people like Carmelo Hayes, it's performers like Dragunov that should be being beat only by a select few in his career. That's Dragunov. That's the problem. I really hope people understand. Nobody is denying the fact that Dragunov and Gunther shouldn't be at a separate PPV, PLE, as a standalone. I get it. We all get it. But that was not the answer last night, and you know that. That came off so weird. That was so odd. Michael Cole seemed at a loss for words. The only good thing, the really good thing, is I thought when they came back from the graphic of Jey moving on in the tournament, I thought Dragunov was going to be in the ring shaking hands with Jey Uso in mutual respect. That would have really been the icing on the cake to one of the worst decisions I've ever seen in this business. Thankfully, there was no mutual respect. But what's really bad is Gunther comes down. Gunther just smiles at Dragunov like, oh, good try, little kid. And then he gets into the ring with Jey Uso. And Gunther is having a real, honest stare down while Jey Uso is dancing. And that's how we went off the air. He's literally like dancing, and Gunther's like, what am I doing? What am I doing in life? We will expand much more on this coming up when we get to that section. This is the Raw 5/13/24 review, as I said. That went really long, that opening, so we're not even going to do an opening electric signature sequence. We're just going to get right into it, guys, because I want to get over the rest of this show. This was a very... this wasn't the best of Raws. I know, right? I know. There's going to be people, I really enjoyed this Raw. I love this Raw. But that doesn't mean it was a good show. In fact, I'll give you an overview before I go over each segment. There was several 2-minute matches, like old Vince McMahon type matches where like Tozawa was in a 2-minute match last night. Otis was in a 2-minute match last night. You had a really odd matchup with not Shayna Baszler. Who was it? Dakota Kai and Becky Lynch. And Dakota just seemed a step or two behind. And Becky was really revved up, really amplified. So Dakota was a couple steps behind. Becky was amped up. And that was just really sloppy, unfortunately. And then you had this moment. It was hysterical where... And I don't mean hysterical in a good way. Adam Pearce is backstage in an interview, and he goes, it's a new era, so we're going to have a new concept for the men's tag team division and how we get number one contenders for Awesome Truth. So he says, because it's a new era, we're going to do a fatal 4-way match to determine the number one contenders. And BC was like, tell me that was a joke. Tell me Adam Pearce is going to all of a sudden cut to... Rick Astley's, what is it? The Rick roll, right? Never gonna give you a... Tell me, because Adam Pearce loves to do the Rick rolls. Tell me this was a Rick roll. Tell me he didn't just say that in the words of Booker T. But no, there was no Rick roll. He literally tried to sell us on the fact that because it's a new era... We're going to have a fatal 4-way to determine the number one contenders for the tag title. We've always gotten that, man. For years, that's how we determine it. because you don't get creative. Nobody wants to come up with an actual division that has fun storylines that we can come to the conclusion that this team is next in line, right? You know when it's done correctly, when the company doesn't even have to tell us. We know who's next in line just based on the booking. No, every single PLE, PPV, every single event, this is how we come up with the number. We just have fatal four-ways. Heck, even at Mania, wasn't the match itself like a fatal four-way or five, something like that? I think they were fighting for the titles with multiple tag teams. That was hilarious. So a bunch of 2-minute matches, a weird match with Dakota and Becky, new era, fatal four-way number one contenders match in the tag division. You know, I'm not going to fall in line with everybody saying this was a great Raw. It just wasn't. Not saying it was horrible. The flow was okay. I guess, man. I don't know. I guess because you had the 2-minute matches. I guess because you had the 2-minute matches, they could stuff some other things in there. I don't. Let's go over it. Let's see, right? Let's see if BC comes across something that kind of changes my way of thinking just a little bit. We started off with Drew McIntyre and Damian Priest. They go face to face to start Raw. That's all I had in my notes. There was nothing of substance here. They just set up their impending matchup for that championship. No matter what, that title has to be on Drew when he takes on CM Punk in the future. We know that. Sorry, not sorry, Damian Priest. But there was no CM Punk. Drew McIntyre actually said you could chant his name all you want. He doesn't come to the small towns, only the big cities. So, Drew McIntyre, Damian Priest. I guess the best we can say was decent face-to-face. Okay. There was nothing. Damian leaves the ring. We cut to commercial. I'm like, that didn't get you excited for the rest of the night, though, you know? Like, you got to do a lot better than that. So then we go into the first match of the night. Io Sky defeating Shayna Baszler in the quarterfinals of the Queen of the Ring. Baszler is pinned via the over the moonsault. This was the right call, right? Io was one of two champions of your division for many months. You just can't have her, at least bare minimum, not make the semifinals, right? I mean, at least Io has to make it to the semi. She was your champion for so long. She did the deed at Mania like she should have, and now you have to do right by her. There's no way Baszler can beat her, because on the flip side, as much as it sucks for Shayna, Baszler just wasn't booked to beat Io. And what I mean by that, right? Let me just go to my stats. Baszler, if you look at the last 9 months of Baszler's in-ring career for WWE, she only has one singles victory. One singles victory in the last 9 months. And that's when she beat Katana Chance on March 25th, so just a few months ago. And that was on a main event taping. That was not like Raw or SmackDown. So one victory in singles competition since September. You'd have to go back to September, mid-September 2023, where she defeated Chelsea Green. So basically, when you look at it through that lens, the last calendar year, basically, for Shayna Baszler, she has 2 singles victories against Katana Chance and Chelsea Green. That's it. And she should be beating Io Sky? Absolutely not. You cannot do Io dirty like that. Now, oddly enough, this was one of the better matches of the night. I'm not saying that they clicked pristinely or that it wasn't sloppy at times, but if you look at the rest of the matches for last night's Raw, a bunch of 2-minute matches, as I aforementioned, matches that were sloppier, matches with just weird finishes. This was one of the better matchups, so I'm not sure what that says about Raw in its totality last night, but that was one of the better matchups. What happened next, man, was for BC, this was the coolest moment of the night. A really cool moment next as Samantha introduces Lillian Garcia to do introductions for the next match. Unfortunately, it was only one introduction. It was Kofi Kingston. Then we went to break. When we came back, Samantha was on the call for Gunther. Lillian just disappeared at that point. But at least we got to hear Lillian Garcia on that microphone on Monday Night Raw. Like, what a moment. And she looks at Samantha, and Lillian says, and I quote, you are amazing. You are doing an incredible job. And they embrace in a big hug. And I'm just like, dude, what a moment. What a moment. I've always held Lillian Garcia in such high regards, you know, just same as JoJo. But Lillian Garcia she really became like a voice, one of several voices of WWE. Like, I'm not a big gamer, but when you play the video games and you hear Lillian Garcia's voice, it just fits. Nobody will ever replace Howard Finkel the Fink, but Lillian Garcia found a way to blaze her own path, and she did it pristinely. So when she left, I was like, that's a huge void. There's no Mike Rome or Schimmel, as much as they're cool in their own aspect. There's no replacement for somebody like Lillian. And recently, Samantha has just been crushing it. So to see them together, I mean, we talk about passing the torch for the actual wrestlers, the talent, but this was like the passing of the torch officially for the announce. It was just so cool, man. You know, these people are just as vital as the wrestlers, right? The announcers, the referees, the managers, the commentators, the GMs. They all play a role in the totality of every show. They're a massive part in the totality of every show. So anyway, that was the best moment for BC. I know it was the most simplistic to many, but it was the most important to BC. Then we go into, hour one ends at that point, and we go into hour number 2 with the Men's King of the Ring quarterfinal, Kofi Kingston versus Gunther. So Kingston taps out to the former Walter to move on. That's it. That's what I had in my notes. I'm like, wait, did I forget? No, it was a decent to good match at times. You know, Michael Cole put his all into it to really make the match seem even more better than it was. But it was Gunther and Kofi. You know, I've seen it before. It wasn't bad. There was nothing more worthy to put in my notes, guys. I'm not going to go over every move. It was a Kingston-Gunther Raw match. And Kingston does exactly what he should have done. Not just lose to Gunther, but no question marks afterwards, right? This was just a vivid, straight-up beating at the end where Kofi is tapping out. That's it. You win. That's that, you know what I mean? That's what needs to be happening. You just make Gunther look like that monster. You make Dragunov look like that beast, and you have them collide next week. And if you do it properly, which I know the boys will go out and do what they do, we'll want to see Dragunov and Gunther many more times in the future. They decided at the end of the show not to do that. We'll get to that. But Gunther, this was business as usual. Gunther defeats Kingston. Kingston does the ultimate job to Gunther. That's it. Nothing else in my notes. We go backstage where Liv Morgan welcomes Valkyria to Raw. Liv then asks if Becky Lynch has always been this big of a bitch. Val says, I don't know. Why don't you ask yourself? As if she's right behind her. So Liv timidly looks behind, and sure enough, there's Becky. Becky just pops her with a right hand. Just pops her. No sound effects was needed or anything like that. Just pops her. And then Becky, as Liv is on her ass, selling the punch, Becky looks over and says, and I quote, I'm not the one scared of a face-to-face fight, you little bitch. That got a pop from the crowd. The line delivery was one of the best that Becky Lynch has ever produced. So that was very well done, that backstage segment. Becky Lynch. Too funny. Big Bronson Reed versus Tozawa was next. Now, pre-match backstage, Gable was screaming at all of Alpha Academy what they're doing wrong, what they should be doing correct. Now, kick rocks. Hit the bricks. Maxine kind of stays behind, though, because Ivy Nile pulls her aside. Ivy's like, dude, what are you doing listening to Gable? Dude's full of crap. Just train yourself. You could do much better without him. So Gable comes back, tells Maxine to go. Gable looks at Ivy Nile and says, you'd be much better off not hanging around. Taylor, not too swift. Meaning Maxine. That just popped BC, and it popped a lot of the crowd. Taylor not too swift, meaning his own person, Maxine. So Ivy is looking at him like, dude, really? That's how you talk to her? The match itself, this was a quick 2-minute match. Bronson literally squashes Tozawa with a tsunami splash for the W. So I'm literally, that was it. I mean, a 2-minute squash match never was to the exact definition like it was in this match. A legit 2-minute squash match. Tozawa, they're still scraping him off the canvas. Next up was the Queen of the Ring quarterfinals, Zoe Stark versus Valkyria. Val defeats Zoe via Nightwing finisher. I like this match. I just liked it. I don't know. More than probably I should have, right? Because it was not pristine. It was sloppy at times, but I liked it. And I think a lot of that is just wanting to see Valkyria perform. And she definitely came through. But I really wanted to give her a real chance, way more than I ever did viewing her in NXT, which was unfortunately too far and few in between. So last night, I really wanted to dedicate that time to, watching Val and, seeing if she can really hang on this main roster. And answer survey says, yup. Val absolutely came through. I can't stand her finisher. What is it again? I might even have written down the wrong thing. Nightwing? It doesn't look devastating. And you can go, oh, BC, that's an awesome finisher, man. It's original. I get it. It doesn't look devastating. She picks them up, and it's almost like she just gently, you might as well just put her on a mattress, your opponent. She just sits down with them, and that's it. And then she's hooked. It's like a hold them down at that point. I mean, a power bomb would be more vicious. I don't like the finisher. I don't. And I know that's probably a hot take, especially with hardcore Val fans. I get it. I even like Val now. I'm becoming a big supporter of Val if she keeps up, these type of performances. I'm not a fan of that finisher, man. I really am not. I thought when I first saw that finisher, I thought I saw it wrong, or it was just a big botch. I was like, oh no, they botched the finish, because it just didn't look devastating at all. And then I found out that was her finisher. And I was like, okay, maybe it was just performed a little off. No, it's literally every single time she just gently puts them down. They just sit down together. Anyway, moving on. Go to Sami Zayn. I keep forgetting Sami Zayn's the IC title holder. It doesn't feel like he's involved in anything. I know, BC's in a triple threat match, man. Which, by the way, who is that even? Gable, him, oh yeah, and Bronson. It's so bad. This is not fun for a lot of us. This is not interesting. Guys, when Sami came in, this was deep into hour number 2. Or maybe it was start of hour 3, right? It was somewhere around there, right? Deep in the middle of the show. When Sami came out, I literally went, oh yeah, Sami's still here. And then he turns around from shouting at the audience. He turns around, he's got a championship. He's the IC title holder. I'm like, oh yeah, he beat Gunther. They just do nothing with Sami after big moments. He wins the tag titles with Kevin Owens at Mania 2 years ago. Nothing ever since, right? The whole rest of the year, he's facing Judgment Day 87 times. He wins the IC title, and he's dancing around with Bronson. They totally butchered Gable and Sami. That was the feud. That was it. This was simplistic. Coming out of Mania, Gable, Sami, turn the volume up. Instead, they just added Bronson, and it just diluted everything. Everything was miserably displaced the second Bronson was added into this. It was absolutely, and they never rectified it, never came back to the point where Sami Zayn comes out, and I'm like, oh yeah, Sami's on the roster. Anyway, Sami Zayn defeats Otis via Haluva kick, and just like Tozawa's match with Bronson a half hour before, this was only 2 minutes. Post-match, Zayn suplexes Chad Gable. Gable blames Otis and slaps Otis upside his dome piece. Gable tells him, come on! So as Gable's going back, Otis is sadly going back like Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh, and he looks all over at the crowd as the crowd's like, leave him, man! And Otis is like... So, I mean, on one hand, beautifully done. On the other hand, super cheesy. We'll see which one prevails out of the two. Up next, Dakota Kai versus Becky Lynch. Match ends in a DQ in favor of Lynch as Io and Kairi attack. Valkyria makes the save and the faces fend off the heels. Liv Morgan comes from behind Lynch, sends her shoulder first into the turnbuckle, so Lynch is laid out, and Valkyria chases off Morgan. So a couple of things in motion here, right? You can set up Liv Morgan, Valkyria, really good first feud for Val. something for live before you do live in Becky. So there's a lot of moving parts in that I'm okay with. This was a sloppier match, as I said I think I said this in the cold open, or right after the cold open. But Val, it just seemed, or not Val made the save. Dakota Kai just seemed like she was a couple beats behind, just a couple steps slow. Normally, that's not a big issue if the person you're facing isn't a couple steps and more amplified ahead. Becky was amped up. Becky just wanted to rock. You could tell Becky wanted to put on an instant classic or something. Becky was ready to have 10 matches. She hit the coffee bar hard before that match, and Dakota just didn't have enough coffee. So you saw a lot of times there was just a lot of sloppiness, and the match did not prevail like I thought it would, because I'm not the biggest supporter or fan of Becky, but I do have great respect for what Becky has done and continues to do. And I do have a lot of respect for Dakota Kai. On paper, I would expect that to come off a lot better than it did last night, but such is. Backstage, Adam Pearce says it's a new era. Thus, he made a fatal four-way match to decide the new number one contenders for the tag team titles held by R-Truth and Miz, known as Awesome Truth. Yeah, that's a new era decision right there, man. We've never heard of a fatal four-way to decide number one contenders. We're getting super creative with Paul Levesque McMahon's WWE. Anyway, that's what we got. Fatal four-way. Balor and McDonuts of Judgment Day versus AOP versus Creed Brothers versus New Catch Republic. New Catch's theme music, by the way, I had to laugh. It seems like everybody's theme now just has either the name of what their faction is or tag team name, or just their name, or spells it out, their name, or is like a catchphrase, right? Like Jey Uso, does he have Yeet, Naomi, N-A-O-I, New Catch Republic? Everybody has like, it's like, on one hand, at least I know who it is, because for years, if you've been following this channel for years, you know, I've been telling you, I don't know half of the wrestlers coming out anymore because the music is so generic. So on one hand, I'm like, at least this tells me who it is. You're literally telling me in the music. Who's coming out next? It's so generic. Oh, New Catch Republic. So, on one hand, BC appreciates that. On the other hand, it is so bad. Like, everybody can't have something said at the beginning. You can have something big as a hook at the beginning, right? But try to make most of it like an instrumental. It's just too funny. It only works if a select few have that intro or that theme music. So it's just real funny that now New Catch Republic shouts out their name before they come out. Anyway, the match itself, Balor pins P.D. Dunne via coup de grace, and Carlito interfered at the end of this and delivered a backstabber to Tyler Bate on the commentary table, and the dude messed his own back up. Carlito was cooked. I had to laugh at first, but I felt bad for the dude, because I'm like, oh, he really messed up his back. Carlito tries to do a backstabber on the commentary table to Bate, and he injures himself. Like, Bate just rolls off. He's like, damn, that sucked. Carlito is like, oh, like, oh no, Carlito. And then afterwards, Carlito is so supposed to, like, you know, be showing that he helped out Judgment Day win. But instead, Carlito's like freaking like this up against the barricade. Like, yeah, we did it. Oh, poor Carlito, man. Took himself out on that backstabber. Anyway, I had to laugh at something, man. It's a fatal four-way tag match. I can't stand these things. Absolute circus. So then we go to the main event. This was Jey Uso Dragunov King of the Ring tournament quarterfinal. The winner goes on to take on Gunther. Again, I've said it a million times. I'll say it a million more. Of course, Gunther Dragunov. You do that at a bigger stage, on a bigger stage, big pay-per-view, proper build, all that. I get it. That's not how Paul Levesque McMahon laid this out. And there's no way Jay can beat Dragunov. We know that. Or maybe a lot of fans don't, right? They're okay with this because they don't even know Dragunov, or that's fine. If you do, you know there's no way believably, no way realistically Jey Uso is beating Dragunov unless you let them do like a 35-minute classic and Jay literally has to give him like 20 splashes, something like that. I don't know what else to tell you. There's no way realistically he's beating Dragunov. We know that. If you know, you know, I should say. But it's not what happened. Uso defeats Dragunov with a spear splash combo. Dragunov knocked on his ass by an Uso spear. Not a Roman, not a Goldberg, an Uso spear. Drops Dragunov. And then a splash as if he was beating Giovanni Vinci. Really? They show a graphic of Jay moving on. And I really thought we were going to have mutual respect at the end. I was like, no. Don't have Dragunov shake this guy's head. Don't. Please don't do a Paul Levesque McMahon mutual respect finish to this Raw. Thankfully, they didn't. Unfortunately, it was the second worst thing for Dragunov, right? He's like up against the barricade like Carlito was, selling like being like you would have thought Jey Uso was the biggest competition he's ever faced. Forget the wars with Dijak, the wars with Gunther. No, Jey Uso had Dragunov against the barricade like, oh. And Gunther comes out. And he just looks at Dragunov and he just looks at him like he's just a miserable, just pathetic version of his old self. It's like he wants to pat him on his head, Good try, little kid. And Gunther walks right by him, gets in front of Uso, and Jey Uso's like starts dancing. Gunther's having a real stare down, right, for their match next week in the semifinal. And Jay just starts going, yeah, yeet. And I'm like, tell me we're not ending the show like that, bro. Like, you can't just dance yeet as Gunther's trying to have like a real, like, there's got to be a cliffhanger or something. No, we faded to black and Uso is just like, yeet, yeet, bitches. And that ended Raw. Welcome to the main roster, Dragunov. It's... Again, we've covered every way you can look at it, right? Because I hold both guys in high regards. Much respect to Jey Uso and Dragunov. I get the Dragunov Gunther thing shouldn't have been in a tournament in the first place. I get it. Trust me. I've been saying that. I said it yesterday. I can't believe they're giving these matches away. But there's no other way you can do it now. There's a way out of it. You just dedicate the entire next week's Raw. The focal point is going to be Gunther and Dragunov, getting that audience, showing them some of TakeOver 36, for instance, showing them throughout the night, like, why this is massive. And then you let them do what they do. And after that, not only did you put Dragunov, or did he put himself on that pedestal for the entire world of wrestling, but it's what happens afterwards. People are going to want to see that match more. I got to see that again, just like we did at 36. TakeOver 36, right? I mean, there was a way out of this where you didn't make Dragunov look like an absolute idiot. Afterwards, Dragunov cut a backstage, one of those, after you lose, after the show's off the air, they cut these .com interviews. And he's like, I don't know what to say. I lost, but I guess there's no shame in losing to the main event, man, Jey Uso. I'm like, what? And then they ask him, like, well, what's your prediction for the semifinal? Like, how sad is that? You're asking this guy the prediction for the people that got farther than you. It's like, wow. Whose idea was it for this dude to cut that? This was just a bad booking botch from the jump, just to have them together in the tournament and then to totally do this at the tail end because you were like, oh no, people are right. Maybe I shouldn't give this away in the tournament. Well, no. You know what? When you went that far, just do it. Just do it correctly. Take out the Posty pad and the Sharpie or the crayons, whichever you use, and do it correctly. It ain't that hard, but two wrongs won't make a right. Don't try to press an autocorrect on this. This is not a simple solution. You're not just going to rub some alcohol on this and all of a sudden, boom, okay, but all right, we shouldn't have had Gunther and Dragunov in this tournament, but put some rubbing alcohol on it and Dragunov is out of it. No, that does not work. You had to do this more properly. It was not done properly. That was an ugly situation. And if you're wondering why a lot of fans were not pleased with that finish, that's why. I hope you understand now. You don't have to agree with it, but I hope you understand. A lot of fans didn't like that finish because it's simply not believable. It's my favorite tag team in the world. That's how much I respect Jey Uso. And it is not believable one iota, not 1% is it believable that Jay would beat Dragunov like that, bro. Not. But it's what we got. Now, Jay versus Gunther. I've seen that match before, and the match wasn't even that good. So now we're just going to do that again? How is that a semifinal? I don't know. So who do you guys got winning this thing too, by the way? I guess Knight is still in it. I think it's going to come down to Tama Tonga. Maybe Tonga and Uso. I mean, Uso, you know what I mean? There might be a way where maybe, I'm not saying, I hope they don't do something stupid like Dragunov interferes and takes out Gunther, because that is so Bush League. Dude, you lost straight up, and now you're taking out Gunther when he had no place in your loss. It's almost like Dragunov is a sore loser. That's just not his character. Giovanni Vinci could come back and cost him, but I think he's over on SmackDown now. But I guess you could go Tonga, Jay. If you're going to go Gunther, maybe Gunther Knight, and then Gunther takes on Knight and defeats Knight. I don't know. There's so many ways you can go with it. But we're not getting the Gunther and Dragunov match. And again, on one hand, okay, you save that for a bigger event. Cool. On the other hand, now we can't get that visual out, right? I mean, now we know that Dragunov can easily be beaten on any given night to somebody like Jey Uso. Just because he calls himself main event, throws on some funky shades, does a weird dance, and yells yeet, and Dragunov can be beat. That's the problem with what happened last night. It's not the fact that we saved a big match for a PLE. Now there's a lot less care to it. Of course Gunther can beat him now. Jey Uso beat him in 13 minutes via splash. Till next time, there will be that next time. Top guys, we are out. Lazy saying check you. Peace.